Oh. So I was trying to figure out what I should play this morning, and I saw the Monterey Pop concert on that I had taped. It was on TCM, and Ravi was playing for about an hour, I guess, at the end of the concert. I said, that sounds like music I ought to think about for when we do Hinduism. So that was that choice, and I'm going to play the beginning of the Monterey Pop concert part that he did, which I actually like better than that piece. I'll do that at the end of the session. So let me share my screen here and start off and say, good morning. This is our 9 a.m. adult Bible study, Boulder City United Methodist Church. We're here on Zoom and studying Adam Hamilton's Christianity and World Religions, and today we're doing chapter 2 on Hinduism. So welcome, everybody.
Good morning.
I was reading up on my Hinduism.
Good morning.
Linda, good to see you. Terry, Rick, Susan, Jen.
And Doug.
David, and Doug. Oh, yeah. Hi, Doug.
And Lee.
And Lee.
Hi, Lee.
And Kimberly, and Sharon and Irma and Linda. So we're getting a good crowd. That's great. Glad everybody could join us today.
Yeah.
So what we're going to discuss today is the Hinduism chapter. And here are some of the things that we should be able to do as a result of this discussion and your readings you did and listening to the video. Identify the historical roots and sacred texts of Hinduism. Articulate some of the basic beliefs of Hinduism. Compare and contrast some Christian beliefs with those of Hinduism, and appreciate the possibilities and potentials of Christian Hindu interactions. So we'll start with our opening prayer. God of all peoples, you speak to us in many ways, from the beauty of the world around us to the stories we receive from our ancestors in faith and your revelation in Jesus Christ. It was Jesus who told us to love our neighbors, and we come together today to learn about our Hindu neighbors. Help us meet you in our meeting. Amen. So I want to start off on page 32 of the book.
I gave the book away to somebody.
If you have the book handy, if you don't, I'm going to read it to you anyway. This is the timeline, and each of these series start with a timeline of what was going on in dates and time, the best they know, and what goes on in that religion and what about in Christianity. And at the back of the book, there's a really good comparison set of tables with all the different religions that are being discussed and the timelines. So approximately 2000 BC, for Hinduism, the migration to the Indus River Valley started 3000 to 2000 BC, which is about the same time as Abraham and Sarah in the Hebrew Bible. And then in 1500 BC, the Vedas was composed and passed down orally. And again, that time frame is between 2000 and 1000 BC, which is about the same time frame as Moses leading the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. And as you remember, we just talked about Moses the last series, which is around 1300 BC, give or take, depending on different authors' interpretations, etc. And then around 1000 BC, the Vedas was committed to writing, and was about the same time as King David. And then in 500 BC, the earliest uplandishes was composed. We'll talk. I think he talks a little bit about that. It was discussed in the book around 600 BC. around the same time as the Hebrew prophets, and then the Bhagavad Gita was written around 550 600 to 500 BC, and about the same time as the Babylonian exile. And then, of course, 0 or -4, depending on was the birth of Jesus, and Jesus lived approximately 4 BC to AD 29. So that was a timeline that's out of the book. I wanted to cover that because I just was watching the video and it didn't seem he covered that timeline, so I thought that was important to discuss before we watch the video. So on the video, here are the questions we're going to discuss after. So I wanted to give you a heads up on what the questions are going to be so you can be thinking about, maybe take notes if you wish. Name some of the Hindu beliefs that are mentioned in this video and which of them seems to be the hardest to understand, and which ones make you want to know more. As Adam interviews Dr. Debarata, or Deb for short, Bhaduri, the videos show pictures of Hindu temple where Dr. Bhaduri worships. What did you notice about this worship space and the worshipers? At the end of the video, Adam Hamilton challenges us to know about our own faith well enough to enter into dialogue with people of other religions. How would you feel if a person of another faith came to interview about what Christians believe? So think about those questions and we'll discuss those after the video. And unless there's any questions ahead of time, I'll start with the video.
I'd like to really focus our attention on what Hindus believe and then how Christianity might line up, the common places and then the places where we might disagree. And to do that, I thought it'd be good to actually hear from a Hindu himself. And so we went to the Hindu temple last week on Lackman Road in Shawnee, and I had a chance to speak to Debabrata Bhaduri. Dr. Debabrata Bhaduri is a nuclear physicist who devoted his life to the field of oncology and spent most of his career working at KU Medical Center. And then in retirement, he went to the VA hospital and he worked several days a week there. He's one of our neighbors. He lives just south of the church, and many of you might know his children, his family, his wife. A really great guy. And I had a chance to sit down with him and I said, can you summarize for me briefly what Hindus believe? And this is what he said.
The central piece of Hindu belief is that there is a almighty, supreme God. The supreme God, which we call Brahman, and that's the source of the deities. And we have many deities. These deities are manifestation of that supreme God, a certain aspect of the God. We believe that, as I said, that every person has a soul. We call the self. The soul takes birth and takes the body and lives in this life. And then when this life ends, the body is destroyed, but the soul does not get destroyed. It transmigrates to another life. Maybe another person is born, or maybe another animal is born, and that soul goes to there and then again creates another life. So in this way, the soul is everlasting. During that time, the work, the karma means the way you work or behave in the world, it actually determines your fate in the next life. And so in the past, people who have done good karma will be born in a better condition, a better life, and in this way, Hindus believe that the life is always evolving in that sense, that the soul, by doing more and more good actions, but our main goal is to pray to God or connect to God, and then do my duties for the family, for the society, for the nation. All these things are prescribed in the Hindu guidelines. And by doing all these things, I try to perfect my soul more and more and get peace.
So I want to recap those and unpack them just a little bit, some of these key centralist beliefs of the Hindu people. And by the way, I'll mention that Hindus are not all of one mind in terms of how they talk about their faith or what they believe, in the same way that Christians are not. So if you were to go interview a Russian Orthodox priest in Moscow and ask him to describe Christianity, and then you were to go to a Pentecostal pastor in Alabama, you would probably hear two very different ways of describing the Christian faith. The same is true with Hinduism. So I'm going to capture sort of the essentials as I understand them. So the first is that Hindus believe in one God, one supreme being, typically referred to as Brahman. And this is confusing to us as Christians, because when we go to a Hindu temple, you'll find that there are, as he described them, deities or divinities, these idols or images of various gods. And so you say, well, wait a minute, I thought they were polytheistic. But the Hindu will quickly explain to you that all of those are only manifestations of the one supreme being. There is just one God, and that God created everything, and everything is in God, and in a sense, everything is God. So Hinduism is a pantheistic or panentheistic faith. That is, that everything is a part of God, and at the same time, God is even bigger than everything that exists. So even your soul is a part of God. Everything that exists is a part of God. And at the same time, God is beyond that. God is transcendent, and God is supra-personal. That is, God is beyond personality. And so typically Hindus don't envision God as a personal being that you would have conversations with in the same way that we envision God. The second thing I'd mention is that every human being, every creature has a soul, an Atman. It's called the Atman, and this soul begins its journey on earth as, and just to remember, that soul is a part of God. Its journey is to return to God and be reunited with God, and it's cloaked in, as it develops, ego. And so the soul begins its journey on earth in a very primitive form. So this may be in the form of an animal, and actually it's always in the form of an animal or perhaps a plant. And if it fulfills its duty, dharma is the word for duty in Hinduism, if it fulfills its duty well, it does whatever an insect is to do or an animal is to do, then it has a chance to be reincarnated as a higher life form. And so it's this long journey of death and rebirth as another life form. If you've done well with your dharma, if you've fulfilled your duty, then you return as a higher life form, and you have a chance to advance in the evolution of your soul on your journey towards being reunited to God. Now, if you don't do your duty, you don't do what you were supposed to do, then you actually go backwards a step or two, and you continue to learn, and then hopefully you've learned the lessons you need to learn, and then you have done the things you need to do, and you're able to be reborn as a higher form of life. And if you've done those things, you carry with you a good energy into your next life. That's called karma. And so you carry with you a good energy if you did well, and if you didn't do so well, you carry with you a bad karma, which leads you backwards in that evolutionary development of your soul. The cycle of life and death and rebirth over and over and over again is called samsara. And samsara is often translated as suffering. And so you are stuck in this cycle, endless cycle, or nearly endless cycle of suffering until you've learned what you need to learn, you've progressed far enough, and then perhaps after hundreds or maybe thousands of lifetimes, you finally achieve moksha. And moksha is release. You've finally shed the ego, you have let go of all of your clinging, and you're finally allowed, in that last incarnation, you are finally allowed to be reunited to God at your death. And this is sometimes described, your soul is described as a drop of water reunited with the ocean. And so now you've become absorbed into God. There's one last idea that's important in Hinduism, and that is the idea of ahimsa. And ahimsa is non-injury. And so within Hinduism, the idea is that you're not to injure other living things. You're not to injure yourself or other living things. And so that means while you might eat vegetables, for many Hindus, they practice vegetarianism. They don't kill animals. Some will say, well, the lower forms of life are okay to eat. And so maybe fish or chicken, but nothing much above that. And so there's this idea that we're not going to injure the animals, but we don't injure one another. And so for some Hindus, they're pacifist. For some Hindus, they believe in just war, but only when it's necessary in order to protect the life of an innocent. And so there's an emphasis on ahimsa. Mahatma Gandhi was an example of this idea lived out. Gandhi was certainly the best known Hindu in our lifetime. Actually died before I was born, but in the last century, died in 1948. And he practiced this idea of non-injury and said it had the power or capacity to actually revolutionize his India. And so he overthrew the British, who were the colonial power in India, by the practice of nonviolent resistance, which was ahimsa. It was non-injury, and then resisting the control of the British. All right, I want to point to a few connections between Hinduism and Christianity, and then we'll look at some of the differences. The first is that we both believe in one supreme God, transcendent, glorious, all-powerful, all-consuming God. The second is this idea that God meets humans through incarnations. So even in the Old Testament, God occasionally appears as a human, but for Christians, of course, the supreme incarnation is Jesus. But when Jesus comes, he's born in the natural way. He's born as a child, God enfleshed, the Word becomes flesh. He's born as an infant, he lives a life, 33 years, he suffers and dies, and the whole point of Jesus coming was to reveal who God is and what God's will is for our lives. And so while we see those incarnations differently, we both share an idea that God sometimes comes in this way. The third is that we share a belief that humans were made for kindness, compassion, love, and good deeds. And so your Hindu friends, they take this very seriously. Their future life depends on the good deeds that they practice towards you and towards other people. And then finally, the respect for life, which is captured in that idea of non-injury, and the capacity to love one's enemies, which is found both in Christianity and in Hinduism. Now, there are many other points of connection, but those are the key points. I want to mention some of the points of divergence. When it comes to God, while I see some parallels there between our understandings of God, especially when Moses is speaking to God and he says, "What's your name?" And God says, "My name is I am that I am. I am life itself. I am existence itself. Everything is contingent upon me." This is the similar kind of idea. And when Paul says to the Athenians, "In him we live and move and have our being," quoting the Greek poet Epimenides, he's capturing an idea that's also paralleled in Hinduism. In the supreme being we live and move and have our being. But God is conceived differently between the two. In Hinduism, as near as I can tell, God is conceived as a very impersonal God, although manifested in more personal ways. Whereas in the Bible, God is a very personal being. So from the very beginning, God creates human beings to be recipients of God's love. And throughout the scriptures, we find God is referred to in very personal ways, deeply personal and intimate ways. When we come to Jesus, when Jesus talks about God, he routinely describes God as his heavenly Father. Well, the second place where I think there's some disconnect is with regard to the idea of salvation and what happens to us at our death, and really what we need to be saved from. And so within Hinduism, we understand the idea is that you are developing, but the ultimate goal is for you to be consumed or subsumed back into God. And you're on this journey, and in that journey, what you need is not saving from sin, but you need spiritual knowledge to help you progress. So the Hindu is searching for spiritual knowledge, found through meditation and finding a spiritual master and reading the scriptures. Now, we all are looking for spiritual knowledge. We do the same. We read scripture. We come and we pray. We listen. We come to church. All of that's about growing in our spiritual lives. But in the Hindu conception, we need that spiritual knowledge, which then allows us to perform good works. And those good works allow us to reach or attain a higher life the next time we come around, when we're reborn. And so that's a different idea of the journey than what Christianity understands we need to be saved from, and what really the story of our planet and our lives are. For Christians, we look at it and say, this is a result of sin. It's our brokenness as human beings. And what we need is to be saved from ourselves. We need forgiveness and grace, and then we need a changed heart. We need a new heart to be changed, and we can't do that by ourselves. And so for the Hindu, while the idea is if I do good works, I can elevate myself to the next status, Christians say you can't do enough good works to save yourself. You need saving. You need God to redeem you and to save you and to offer you grace and mercy that you don't deserve. You don't get what you deserve in Christianity. And you do get what you don't deserve in Christianity. And so that idea is called grace. And then we believe that when we get to the end of this life, we stand before God and that's it. We don't get another one or 100 more or 1,000 more. It's just this one. And at the end of this life, what we're offered is the opportunity to be with God in God's eternal kingdom. So that's the Christian conception of what's going on. And when I think about that, I think about the hope I have. First, to be able to connect with God personally and intimately as we try to do in our own Christian spiritual journey. The second is that I know that I cannot do enough good works to win my way to heaven, but instead God offers this as a gift. And then in response to that, in response to God's good gift, I seek to do good work and good works. So here's what I want to challenge you to be and to do. I want you to be the kind of people who understand your own faith well enough to have a real dialogue with other people about it. I want you to not to be threatened by other people's faith, but instead to listen with compassion and kindness and empathy. To be the kind of people who, in listening to someone talk about their faith, can find common ground and at the same time can find certain places where you say, well, that's why I appreciate my faith. That's my hope and prayer for us. Empathetic, compassionate, concerned, and recognizing the good in others, and in the process of dialoguing, growing in our faith while demonstrating love for our neighbor.
Okay. And Barb joined us. Hi, Barb. How are you?
Barbara Paulson up there in the middle.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, and Toddy is joined as well. All right, so
Rick is on. There's
Rick is on.
Yeah.
So let's name some of the Hindu beliefs that are mentioned in this video, and what seems to be the hardest to understand and what makes you want them to know more. Don't all speak at once.
Oh, I would not want to come back as a grasshopper. No, I think the concept is very interesting, and I do have Hindu friends that do believe this. And sometimes, you know, instead of us being good because we want to get to heaven, excuse that term, but I think sometimes my Hindu friends live in fear that they're going to come be in a lower life form after their death. And so they do good and good works and live a good life, not just to be in a better place in the next life, but fear of where they could be if they aren't good.
Okay.
I just was wondering though, on Linda's comment about returning as I'll put it this way, a lesser life form. Would that be a regression as I understood? And therefore you're again working forward? And then if you're at this point of where are we in levels of life form? That's what was a little confusing to me.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, in terms of the idea about grace versus in the Hindus having, you know, to keep working to become better and better through these other lives, in some ways, I don't think we're as different as we might think we are, because I think in Christianity, we're almost a little schizophrenic. I mean, we believe in grace, but we don't totally throw out the idea that how you live your life and the work that you do is, we don't believe that it's meaningless. So although we emphasize grace, we kind of look at it from both ways in terms of good works and grace, whereas they're more focused on the good works.
Yeah, I think we like to hedge our bets, don't we? We don't want to just trust God. We want to try to do everything we can to maybe look better when we get up there and get judged. I think that's what the summary of what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think as we go through and after having read the book and and looked at all the videos and stuff to prepare, I'm really feeling there's good parts of each of these religions that we actually do and pick up in Christianity, and there's a lot more common ground than I ever thought there was. So I think that's one of the things I've picked up out of this. Anybody else have any other thoughts on that question? We'll move on. Okay. During the interview, the video shows pictures of the Hindu temple where Dr. Badura and others worship. What did you notice about this worship space and the worshipers? Those of you who had your eyes open during the video.
Well, they had lots of deities.
They had what? Flashy? Jen, I didn't hear what your point was.
Well, they showed lots of deities, and I assume those are for the different aspects of their God. And they were very worshipful and reverent toward their deities, which I think is similar.
Okay. Anybody else notice anything?
Well, I did notice that they have special garments that they wear when they worship, as opposed to their wearing their street clothes and their work clothes. I had neighbors that went on, I don't know if it's Saturday or Sunday, that when they went to their church, but they had special garments that they'd wear. I thought that was interesting. I know when I was young, I had my Sunday clothes that I had.
I think we all had our Sunday suit or Sunday best, we used to call it. Put on
I
our
never
Sunday...
thought I'd be doing Bible study in my pajamas, though.
Well, thank you for sharing that. One advantage of the video is you can hone in on the portion of your attire that you want to hone in on, as opposed to the rest of you. Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
Terry,
Terry.
is she muted?
I don't know. We're not hearing you, Terry. You're not muted. You're not muted from the master, so I don't know why we're not hearing you.
Does she have to turn her sound off? Oh, now she is muted.
Yeah, now she's muted.
Okay, now let's try it. Try it now. No, you're not. It's something going on with your headset. All right, we'll come back to you if you get it. Oh, you might want to plug it in. There you go.
No, she was plugged in.
No, it's okay. It's nice to see you anyway, Terry. That's good.
Hey, tell her to send a chat.
Yeah, you can send a chat if you want. Okay. Any other thoughts? We'll go on. Well, I did have one last thought on that, and it's not that dissimilar to the choir putting robes on, for example, or the minister or priest or pastor putting on a vestment, except that this would be the whole congregation putting on vestments. Okay, at the end of the video, Adam challenges us to know our own faith well enough to enter into a dialogue with people of other religions. How would you feel if a person of another faith came to interview you about your Christian beliefs? Would you be able to do as good a job as that Dr. Baduri did, which was very, very pithy?
I don't know if I could do as good as that, but one of the things that I think is a challenge when you're talking to somebody with another faith background is that you actually gear your discussion around learning from them and sharing without it becoming, without the focus of it becoming convinced to try to convince them to change or that the way you think is better. You have to watch carefully that you're doing an honest discussion for both sides to learn and share and avoid bringing this other in. Otherwise, it's just going to fall apart and not go anywhere.
Okay. So my plan right now is for after Christmas, after we do the incarnation book for Christmas, is that we will do the creed, the book on the creed, and we'll spend a lot of time discussing different creeds and the discussion to be able to answer those questions very easily by, to some extent, pulling pieces out of the creed that you can use to describe your faith. So if everybody doesn't know, Jen and I have been working on a list of activities along with Michael for what we'll cover for Bible studies, and I do have enough to keep us busy for a while. So we're planning ahead.
That's an understatement.
Anybody else on this topic? I want to move on. So it's wasn't covered in the video, and it wasn't covered, but it is covered in the book. And that was a discussion of Gandhi. He mentions Gandhi, but there wasn't very much about it. What did Gandhi say that his pacifism, non-injury beliefs came from?
Somebody talk, is that David talking?
I don't know. If you, I'll give you a hint, it's on page 48 and 49 of the book.
That helps.
He said his study of Christianity and Jesus was his basis for
That's right.
his pacifism and his non-injury. And he was asked whether, since he talks about Jesus all the time, are you a Christian? He said, one of the things he said was that while he didn't believe everything that Christians believed, he did consider himself to be a follower of Jesus, because Jesus helped him see how living a life of non-injury and sacrificial love could actually change the world. And he said, he was asked, what portrait do you have in your office?
Jesus.
And it was a portrait of Jesus. So then, turning that around, what did Dr. Martin Luther King say that he used as his basis for his nonviolent and pacifism approach?
I'm going to take a wild guess and say it was Mahatma Gandhi.
There you go. That was a good wild guess. It was actually discussed in the next paragraph of the book. That he was inspired, while he certainly, the teachings of Jesus inspired him, it was specifically Gandhi's leadership as a picture of soul force, he called it, S-O-U-L force, and that he learned from Gandhi, who learned from Jesus. So I thought that was a very interesting aside of the whole thing, how close we are to some of these things in these different religions. I want to go very quickly through a list of things out of the Hindu religion and what the name of that is, because he covered it so fast, and we covered it in some of the other discussion, and it wasn't mentioned very quickly, so very clearly. So, what are the sacred scriptures of Hinduism called?
The early ones were called the Vedas.
Right. Okay. What are the commentaries on sacred scriptures called?
Upanishads?
Upanishads, right. The best known sacred texts among the Hindus. Bhagavad Gita. Charioteer / god of the best known Hindu text.
Yeah.
Krishna. The prince of the best known Hindu text. All these are in the all these were in the book, by the way. The Arjuna, the most common name for for one god of Hinduism. Everybody should get this one.
Krishna.
the best common name for one god of Hinduism.
Krishna. Or Brahman.
Anybody else? Brahman.
Brahman. Krishna.
Okay, the name Krishna was the charioteer god best known in the Hindu text. That was Krishna. The name for the soul possessed by all creatures.
Something like Atma.
Yeah, Atman or Atman. Duty to God.
Dharma.
Energy created by deeds. Karma. Everybody uses karma, right? The cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Samsara.
Oh, I missed that one. That's in my notes.
The final release from the incarnation cycle, from the reincarnation cycle.
Moksha.
Moksha. Reunion with God. Nirvana.
Oh, Nirvana, yeah, Nirvana.
That's another thing we hear about all the time,
Yeah.
Nirvana. That's our reunion with God. And non-injury. Ahimsa.
Ahimsa, yeah.
Okay, I just thought that was kind of interesting to get those, have that terminology and because we hear a lot of that terminology at times, but we don't necessarily know exactly how to put it into context. Okay, let's just discuss briefly the Hindu understanding of God and compare that to some of the Christian beliefs. What does it mean to you that God is personal?
Well, for me, it's that I can talk to God.
It's a being you can communicate with. Oops. Yeah, it's a being you can communicate with.
Okay, good. Anybody else have a thought on that?
He hears us.
I think it's helped. I mean, I think what they've done is they're using deities to be able to see something that they can relate to and talk to, whereas we think of God in the person of Jesus Christ as somebody we can talk to, or God, him or herself, as somebody we can actually talk to. So I think that's one of the differences. How do you understand God's presence at all times when you are unaware of God's presence?
He's omnipotent, omniscient, whatever that word is. He's everywhere.
Okay.
I think you learn it over a lifetime of experience, because enough Bible study and reading, especially John 17, where he talks about his Olivet, I can't remember the right name for it, concourse or something, is that, and what he keeps talking all the time is that God is in him. If you see him, you see God, that he and God are one. And in his in John 17, in his long prayer, he prays that the disciples will become one with him and one with God as they merge, I guess. And then also that what we count on is that anyone who hears the teachings that are in the future from the apostles will also become one with him and one with God. And I think over time, as you reflect on that and as you see how God works in your life on a daily basis, you'll get very close.
Okay. I think one of the differences that I picked up was the Hindus believe God is everything, or God is in everything, as opposed to the Christians believe God is the creator of everything, but isn't necessarily in the individual object. So if you see the Golden Gate Bridge, if you look behind Rick and see the Golden Gate Bridge, I'm pretty sure that's the Golden Gate, isn't it?
I'm gonna guess it's just not a good view of it.
No, it's a Golden Gate. I just want, sometimes every now and again you can see the Bay Bridge, and it looks similar at one point going out to the island in between. But anyway, the point is that's not God. God is not the bridge. God created the people who designed and built the bridge, but God isn't the bridge. Just like God is not the rock that's on either side of the bridge, or the water that flows through the bridge, or the fish that are in the that swim in the water.
But maybe we would be well served by thinking that God actually is in everything. That might make us feel differently about protecting our world, protecting our resources. It might even change how we think of other living creatures.
Yeah, and I agree with you on God is in everything, but God is not those things.
Correct.
That was the difference I was trying to point out.
Yeah, correct. But the Bible tells us that God is in every living thing,
Right.
because he holds all of the living things together. And you know, we keep saying that God is helping our heart continue to beat and our breasts continue to go on. And so we see God as being part of us, helping us at all times.
Okay.
You know what? I had the same thoughts as Barbara. In my mind, I was picturing dynamiting a mountain to build a tunnel through it and everything. And I'm wondering how a Hindu could justify doing that if they believe that that mountain is God.
Or as part of God.
It's part of God, part of God.
I think we're really getting into semantics and very fine details that if you talk to 100 different Christians and 100 different Hindus, you may get a range of answers that you could not necessarily separate between the people who were Christian and the people who were Hindu.
Yeah.
It's a fairly fine line.
I always like to use the statement that ask anybody for their opinion and you'll get at least 2 or 3.
Absolutely, yeah.
But Linda makes a good point, and thinking about it, if you just even blow up the mountain, you haven't destroyed the elements. The elements are all there. They're just rearranged.
That's true. That's true. But if you burn down the forest, didn't you destroy it?
Actually,
No, it's turned to ash.
the ability to have the new growth grow back.
That's true.
Thank you. I was about to say, new growth will come back, and fire is necessary sometimes to get rebirth.
Yeah, you want things in proportion. Water is good too, but too much water isn't good, and fire isn't good either.
Well, now you're getting to intent too. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Doing something for your own purpose and to aggrandize yourself or whatever is different than doing the same act if it was for the betterment of the environment or other people or whatever. So many acts, it's all what the intent is rather than the specific act that makes a difference.
Okay, I've got some more. Move on to another topic about reincarnation. The Hindus' belief in reincarnation. And I know it's not necessarily a Christian belief in reincarnation, but how many of us feel that we lived, we or our soul or something lived in a life before this?
Well, I know a lot of people that believe that.
So it may not be reincarnation per se, and it may not be an endless cycle of reincarnation, but I do believe there's elements of our soul that and our life that came from other ones, like our parents or our great-grandparents or somewhere else in the line. But some of that flows through.
Fake news.
Excuse me?
Fake news. It's an incarnation of fake news. It's a different thing. But you know, I did see a special on Nova where they actually were able to probe parts of the brain and cause memories to come to that person that had never really happened. And I go, what was that? Was that somebody who lived a previous life, and that memory was in there? Just throwing it out there.
Well, you know, you get to that question of nature or nurture. We all come into this world in a certain way, and then our experiences and our interactions and everything have a great deal to do with what we ultimately are. But science is also starting to say that maybe we shouldn't look at those two different things, because when you come into this world, it's the interactions you have, where you live. There's all kinds of factors that happen during your life that essentially change the DNA that's passed on to your children. So it's not through DNA, we actually change with each generation as go by based on our experiences and our living situations.
And I always wondered about dreams. You know, where do the dreams come from? And for example, if you dream that a railroad train is running through your bedroom, and the next or the bedroom you're sleeping in, and you wake up and look out the window, and you're actually sleeping next to a railroad track, and the night before, you know, the railroad went by. That was in a movie we saw last night. So I always wondered about some of those things of the mind. But let's move on to reincarnation a little bit more and talk about, according to the Hindu beliefs, what is the origin of the soul?
It is a part of the God self.
Okay, David, I don't think we heard you clear. Could you do that again? David? I think he said it's part of the self, right?
Part of the God self.
Yeah.
Okay.
God self.
Right.
I'm not
Okay.
talking.
Is he in the same house with Barbara?
Yes, he is.
I don't know where the modem is, but somewhere he must be further away from the modem.
No, actually, he's a little bit closer to the modem than I am.
Oh well, maybe he's moved closer to the microphone.
He's muted.
Now
He is now. He's going to see Barbara.
There he is.
I don't know. He muted himself, but he came back on the video. So, what is the soul's duty to God?
To come home.
Good thought. To be reunited by doing good works.
Mhm.
Okay. Why do humans do bad things according to the Hindus?
Oh.
Could you repeat that question?
Why do humans do bad things?
Bad karma.
Why?
Oh.
Okay. Well, what is the significance of karma?
It sets the direction that you're going. It's either good karma or bad karma.
Yeah. And for some reason, I'd always understood karma being something that wasn't something you controlled. I thought karma was something that happened to you. But it's clear from this readings and discussions that karma is something you're doing. It's your deeds. It's your works. So that's different. I mean, I've always heard the comment about good karma or bad karma being something that was happening to you. So It's interesting to find out what the real news is as opposed to the fake news.
Yeah.
What's the end of the cycle?
Is that nirvana? I mean,
It's nirvana. It's moksha, which is the release of the reincarnation cycle and joining God, reunion with God. And there was a description about a drop of water into an ocean.
I like that analogy.
I like the analogy that the release of the ego, because I feel ego is what we're fighting all of our life.
you know, the reuniting with God and the analogy of the drop of water in the ocean makes me think that they think that we are part of God, that we are going to become a part of God, not separate from God, not up there visiting God, but actually becoming one with God. That's the way I read it.
And that, to me, that's what the drop of water symbolizes.
Yeah.
You become part of God and everything that is God, and also you have given up you've lost all control. A drop of water has no control over the ocean. So it's reuniting and a totally releasing of any control and accepting, fully accepting wherever God is going and wants you to go.
I once had it explained to me, and I'm not sure I can relate this, is that the soul is energy, and that when we finally reach that state of nirvana, we rejoin that energy. That God is not an entity. This is speaking from Hindu, not an entity, but it's just energy. Have you ever heard that one? No?
Makes me think of the force be with you.
Yeah. And maybe that's where the book came from. I'm thinking of Ronald Reagan and the Death Star and the having things on the moon to shoot things down in space. But anyway.
I don't think that was a Death Star, was it?
No, but it was
Ronald Reagan.
no,
Ronald,
but a laser thing, right?
It was the Star Wars defense system.
Right.
What does this idea of reincarnation suggest about the Hindu worldview?
You know, I get the idea in my heart that, you know, you're going to get another chance at this. You know, if your life was really, if you did not see your life as being good, you're going to get another chance at it. And I know it's kind of like, I don't know. What does everybody else feel?
If you haven't done good works, you're going to be going back to a lower life form.
Yeah.
So it's going to take you a while longer to get going. So you better certainly be doing good works at all times, right?
It's an uneven path. It's a long struggle. But I think you could say the same thing is true in Christianity. I mean, the path to God isn't necessarily just a straight line. For many of us, it's a wandering path. It's a relooping. It's going back and coming forward again. We just do it in one life. They do it across many lives.
Terry just asked a question about can you be reincarnated through your children or through anyone? I don't think there's anything specific. And you don't have any recollection in that reincarnation what your previous life was, as I understood it.
Unless you go to a good psychologist who...
Or a tarot card reader.
Yeah, right.
So the last thing to think about, and we don't have time to really discuss it, it's something we discuss all the time, and that's the Hinduism understanding of an obligation to non-injury, and some of the ways that Hindus live out Sema in their lives, and how Christians do some Christians do the same things. So think about that. Think about the biblical passages referring to nonviolence and how Christians practice nonviolence as well. Okay, so I'm gonna start wrapping up here and discuss next week. We're gonna do Buddhism. I'm not sure what music I can find for Buddhism, but I will try to find something that might be interesting. I don't know whether anybody liked the beginning music or not, but if you did, stay tuned, because I am going to play a few minutes of an excerpt out of Ravi Shattar's sitar music that was in the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967.
Oh.
So let's.
Were you there?
Any other questions? Excuse me.
Were you there?
No, actually, I was in college in '67.
Weren't we all?
And that summer, '67, I was actually in school, because we went to school year round for that year. So no, I didn't get out to Monterey, but there was a good, and I think you can get it on YouTube. There's a movie of the Monterey Pop Festival that was done in '68, and they just played it last week. I think it was on TCM. Had a whole series of music concerts, and movies made from music concerts. So, and most of it was '60s. So it was all stuff that I remember growing up music-wise, and still listen to today. Okay, so again, next week we'll do Buddhism. It's chapter 3 in the book. If you don't have the book, go and watch the Adam Hamilton video, pull down the study guides and look through that material as you have time, and get prepared for next week.
I have a comment.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
As Hamilton was using the analogy of the Picasso and how we all see something differently in it, I'm just wondering what I'm looking at when I look at Linda Robert Shaw's video there, or that picture. Linda, what are we looking at?
Looks like the bottom part of a lamp.
You're looking at the light above my dining room table.
I
didn't want you to.
I thought it was a speaker.
I didn't want you to watch me have my breakfast while I was listening.
So, see how we all saw something different there?
Yes.
If it had only been 4 little squares instead of 6 squares, I would have thought it was the back of a Microsoft Surface computer.
Maybe it's an inner.
Let me help you orient a little bit.
Perhaps it was okay. Perhaps it was a flying saucer.
I thought it was the top of an intercontinental missile or something. Anyway.
All right. Well, with that as a closing, we'll do a closing prayer.
All right. Okay.
Let us pray.
Maybe there's something to reflect on.
Hang on here for a second. I'm going to see if I can't mute everybody while I do the closing prayer. Oh God, we are grateful for your love, mercy, and grace. We are grateful that you are personal, that you know us, love us, and care for us more than we could possibly imagine. We are grateful that you came to us in Jesus Christ, born into this world, taking on human flesh and human feelings, and living, growing, teaching, showing, suffering, dying, and rising. Help us to know who you are and who you call us to be. Thank you for our Hindu neighbors and friends. We pray that you might make us a blessing to them. Help us listen and learn, and in the process grow in all of our own faith, even as we encourage others and love them well. In your holy name, amen.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. And there's a whole bunch of chats here.
Yeah.
So I haven't had a chance to read them all, but I will. It looks like it's Terry's comments. So I'm glad we'll at least get to hear Terry on the on the chat. And so, like I said, the last thing I'll do is I will start the music here in a second. Let me get to the right screen for that.
I did have a thought that maybe if we get on a few minutes early, we might actually test our microphone with you, you know, so we know if we can talk to you or not.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Okay,
Thank you, Scott, for all you do.
thanks.
Thank you.